Straight down the barrel is a term often used to describe a particular style of cinematography where a character looks directly into the camera, breaking the fourth wall and creating a sense of direct communication with the audience. This technique can be powerful, unsettling, or intimate, depending on the context, and has been used effectively in various films to elicit different emotional responses. Let's dive into the concept and its application in movies. What does straight down the barrel mean? In film terminology, when a character looks straight into the camera, it's as if they're looking down the barrel of the lens. This can disrupt the usual dynamic of film watching because audiences typically experience films as observers. By looking directly at the camera, the character acknowledges the viewer's presence, breaking the illusion of a separate, self-contained world within the film. Historical context and use in cinema. The use of this technique has evolved over time. Here are a few notable ways it has been applied. 1. Breaking the fourth wall. The concept of breaking the fourth wall originates from theater, where the fourth wall is the imaginary barrier between the performers and the audience. In cinema, it translates to moments when characters address the audience directly, creating a unique kind of engagement. Ferris Bueller's Day Off, 1986. Ferris regularly talks to the audience, explaining his thoughts and plans, which helps create a playful, conspiratorial atmosphere. Deadpool, 2016. This superhero film uses the technique for comedic effect, allowing Deadpool to make meta-commentary on the film industry, superhero tropes, and even the audience's expectations. 2. Intensifying emotional impact. When a character looks directly at the camera, it can create an intense, unsettling, or deeply emotional moment because it makes the viewer feel addressed or implicated. It can also convey honesty, vulnerability, or confrontation. Examples: The Silence of the Lambs, 1991. There are multiple scenes where characters, especially Hannibal Lecter and Clarice Starling, seem to stare directly at the viewer. This emphasizes the psychological tension and draws the audience into their intense interactions. American Psycho, 2000. Patrick Bateman's monologues, delivered straight to the camera, offer a chilling insight into his twisted psyche, making viewers complicit in his confessions. 3. Documentary and mockumentary style. Many documentaries naturally involve looking straight at the camera during interviews, but mockumentaries borrow this style to mimic real-life formats and add humor or realism. Examples: The Office, US. 2005 to 2013. Characters often look directly at the camera, reacting to situations or expressing unspoken thoughts, which makes the audience feel part of the workplace dynamic. This is Spinal Tap, 1984. The mockumentary style of this film uses direct-to-camera interviews to parody rock documentaries, making the humor feel more authentic and grounded. 4. Political and social commentary. Direct address can also be a tool for delivering social or political commentary, making the audience reflect on the message being delivered. Examples: Fight Club, 1999. Tyler Durden's direct addresses to the camera are used to critique consumer culture, masculinity, and modern life. His engagement with the viewer becomes a way to deliver the film's subversive themes. The Big Short, 2015. Characters like Ryan Gosling's Jared Vennet directly explain complex financial concepts to the audience, using humor and candidness to make the film's critique of the financial system more accessible. Technical aspects. From a cinematography perspective, shooting straight down the barrel requires precise framing and often a specific lens choice. Depending on the intended effect, directors might use close-ups to create intimacy or intensity, or wider shots to make the character's address feel more detached or observational. It's a technique that can break the usual spatial dynamics of a film, creating a powerful and memorable moment. The future of straight down the barrel. As storytelling mediums evolve, this technique continues to find new life. With the rise of streaming platforms and more experimental content, filmmakers are more willing to play with audience engagement. Shows like Fleabag, 2016-2019, have taken the concept and deepened it, using the direct address as a way to convey inner thoughts and create a bond between the protagonist and the viewer. In interactive media like video games or VR films, direct address can be even more immersive, making the player or viewer an integral part of the narrative. The use of straight down the barrel shots is a versatile tool in the filmmaker's arsenal, capable of engaging viewers on a level that traditional cinematic approaches cannot. Whether it's for humor, intensity, intimacy, or direct commentary, this technique is a deliberate choice that can disrupt, charm, or confront, depending on how it is wielded. As film and media continue to explore new ways to connect with audiences, the evolution of this approach will likely keep pushing boundaries. The Alabama Hills in California have a rich and fascinating movie history, serving as a popular filming location for over a century. Located near the town of Lone Pine at the base of the Sierra Nevada mountains, this area has been a versatile backdrop for many films, from classic westerns to modern blockbusters. Let's explore the full story of how the Alabama Hills became a movie-making hotspot. The geography of the Alabama Hills. The Alabama Hills are characterized by their unique and rugged landscape. They feature a mix of rounded, weathered boulders and rock formations, set against the dramatic backdrop of the Sierra Nevada peaks, including the towering Mount Whitney. This contrast creates a visually striking setting that can be made to look like a variety of different locations, from deserts and canyons to alien planets. Early beginnings, silent films and the Western boom. The movie history of the Alabama Hills dates back to the 1920s during the silent film era. Filmmakers were drawn to the area for its wild, untamed beauty and its resemblance to the American frontier, which was ideal for Western films. In an era when the Wild West was a popular subject, the Alabama Hills provided an authentic-looking setting without the need to travel too far from Hollywood. Some of the earliest films shot here include silent westerns, where the rocky terrain and open skies made for dramatic chase scenes and gunfights. Films like The Roundup, 1920, used the area's stunning backdrops to create a sense of isolation and adventure, traits that were synonymous with westerns of that time. Golden Age of Westerns, the 1930s to the 1950s. The real boom in the Alabama Hills film history occurred during the 1930s to the 1950s, often referred to as the Golden Age of Westerns. Hollywood churned out a vast number of westerns, and the Alabama Hills became a go-to spot for filmmakers seeking diverse landscapes within easy reach of Los Angeles. B-movie studios, which produced lower-budget films, found the area especially appealing because it was affordable and flexible. The landscape could be transformed into the plains of Texas, the deserts of Arizona, or even the Badlands of Wyoming. Directors could shoot multiple films with different settings, all in the same general area, changing just the angles or sets. Some notable westerns filmed in the Alabama Hills during this period include Hopalong Cassidy films, featuring William Boyd as the titular cowboy hero. The rugged terrain provided perfect settings for many of his adventures. The Lone Ranger series, which used the location for several episodes to depict the vast, open landscapes typical of Western stories. Gunga Din, 1939, although not a traditional Western, used the hills to represent British colonial India, showcasing how the area's versatility could mimic various exotic locations. Iconic films and stars. The Alabama Hills have seen some of the biggest stars of the mid 20th century. Here are a few classic films and notable actors associated with the area. 1. John Wayne, known as the quintessential cowboy, John Wayne shot several films here, including The Cowboys, 1972, and Tycoon, 1947. The Alabama Hills became synonymous with the gritty, rugged persona that Wayne embodied. 2. Gary Cooper, High Noon, 1952, though primarily filmed elsewhere, drew inspiration from the same type of stark, Western imagery that the Alabama Hills could provide. Cooper starred in films that frequently embraced similar visuals. The 3. Humphrey Bogart. The film High Sierra, 1941, one of Bogart's breakthrough roles, was shot around the nearby area, and the scenery plays a crucial part in the film's climactic chase scenes. Number 4. Errol Flynn. The actors starred in They Died with Their Boots On, 1941, a film about General Custer, which used the Alabama Hills to simulate the rugged terrain of the American West. Evolution beyond Westerns, the 1960s and onwards. While the Western genre dominated the early years, the Alabama Hills didn't stay confined to this single category. As the popularity of Westerns began to wane in the 1960s, the area found new life by appearing in a variety of different genres. Science fiction became a new playground, using the rocky, otherworldly appearance of the hills to depict alien landscapes. For example, Tremors, 1990, a cult classic horror comedy, used the Alabama Hills as the setting for a small desert town terrorized by underground creatures. Star Trek, multiple episodes also utilized the area, transforming it into strange new worlds where Captain Kirk and his crew could explore and encounter alien beings. Action and adventure films. Gladiator, 2000. The opening battle scene in Germania was partially filmed in the Alabama Hills, with the rocky terrain and the Sierra Nevada providing a dramatic, snow-capped backdrop. Iron Man, 2008. The area doubled as Afghanistan for scenes where Tony Stark gets captured and later escapes. This introduced the Alabama Hills to a new generation of viewers and showcased its ability to stand in for a remote mountainous environment. Modern filming and ongoing popularity. Today, the Alabama Hills remain a popular filming destination. While fewer traditional westerns are made, filmmakers still seek out the area for its cinematic appeal. TV shows, commercials, and even music videos have taken advantage of the dramatic landscapes. The area has also been featured in documentaries and travel series, highlighting its role in Hollywood history. One reason the Alabama Hills continues to be a favored location is its proximity to Los Angeles. Filmmakers can get the rugged, open feel of a remote desert location without having to travel far, making it convenient for production crews. Lone Pine Film Festival and Legacy. To celebrate its rich movie history, the town of Lone Pine, located near the Alabama Hills, hosts the Lone Pine Film Festival every year. Since 1989, fans of classic westerns and film history enthusiasts have gathered here to watch movies, take guided tours of filming locations, and participate in panels with actors, directors, and historians. The festival has helped preserve the legacy of the area and has even marked specific locations where famous scenes were shot. Visitors can take a self-guided tour of movie sites, following in the footsteps of John Wayne, Clint Eastwood, and other Hollywood legends. Conclusion. The Alabama Hills have played a crucial role in the visual storytelling of American cinema. From its early days as a backdrop for silent westerns to its modern appearances in blockbuster films, the area's unique landscape has allowed it to stand in for countless settings, real and imagined. Its continued popularity speaks to the timeless, rugged beauty that filmmakers and audiences find compelling. Camera work in the Alabama hills has been a crucial element in bringing the dynamic and rugged essence of this landscape to life, especially in Western films and other action heavy genres. The unique geography of the area provided cinematographers with a natural playground to explore different angles, movements, and framing techniques that heightened the drama of the scenes shot there. Here's a closer look at the key aspects of how filmmakers approached camera work in the Alabama hills. 1. Wide shots for epic scale. One of the most recognizable techniques in films shot in the Alabama hills is the use of wide shots. These expansive, sweeping views capture the vastness of the area, showing the open plains, rugged rock formations, and the towering Sierra Nevada in the background. Purpose. Wide shots give a sense of scale and isolation, which is perfect for westerns where the landscape plays a key role in storytelling. By showing characters as small figures within a grand, wild environment, filmmakers could emphasize themes of survival, freedom, and the harshness of the frontier. Examples. Films like How the West Was Won and The Lone Ranger often used wide-angle lenses to show riders galloping across large expanses, creating a visual spectacle that made the chases feel epic and urgent.
Sure.
Tracking shots to follow the action. Tracking shots where the camera moves alongside the action were extensively used in the Alabama hills to capture the dynamic motion of horse chases or characters running across the rugged terrain. Filmmakers would often place the camera on a vehicle or a dolly to follow riders or vehicles smoothly, giving a sense of speed and movement. Challenges. The uneven, rocky ground of the Alabama hills made this a technical challenge. Early productions had to innovate, using specialized rigs to ensure stable shots. In later years, Steadicams and drones became popular tools for capturing smooth, flowing movements through the difficult terrain. Impact. Tracking shots helped viewers stay engaged in the action, creating a visceral sense of movement. The camera could chase a rider around boulders, sweep down a hill, or follow along a canyon, immersing the audience in the speed and chaos of the moment. 3. Low-angle shots to add power and drama. Low-angle shots were frequently used to make characters, especially cowboys or outlaws, appear more powerful and heroic. By positioning the camera below the actors, looking up at them against the backdrop of the sky or mountains, filmmakers could give the impression of dominance and stature. Examples. Classic Western heroes like John Wayne were often filmed from a low angle, riding their horses with the Alabama hills stretching out behind them. This shot not only highlighted the actor, but also showcased the rugged landscape, enhancing the dramatic effect. Psychological effect. Low-angle shots make characters look larger than life, giving the audience a sense of awe and reverence. In chase scenes, this angle can amplify the sense of speed as the ground seems to rush past and the rider appears powerful and relentless. At 4. Natural framing with rock formations. The Alabama Hills' natural rock formations provided unique opportunities for framing shots. Cinematographers could use gaps between rocks, arches, and narrow canyons to frame characters or action, drawing the audience's eye to a specific part of the scene. Example, in Gunga Din, 1939, several shots used natural arches and gaps in the rocks to frame characters, adding a layer of visual interest to the scene. This technique gives a sense of depth, as the audience sees the action through a sort of window created by the rocks. Artistic purpose. Natural framing can add a sense of confinement or isolation, depending on how it's used. For example, a rider seen through a tight gap between boulders may appear trapped or vulnerable, whereas a wide, open frame can convey freedom and exploration. 5. Aerial shots for expansive perspectives. Aerial shots became more common as technology advanced. Filmmakers could now use helicopters and, more recently, drones to capture sweeping views from above, showing off the layout of the Alabama hills and the characters moving through it. Purpose. These shots provide context, helping viewers understand the geography of a chase or battle. They give a bird's eye view of the terrain, allowing audiences to see where the action is headed, or to watch multiple riders moving across the landscape from different directions. Modern example. In Iron Man, 2008, Aerial shots captured the mountainous regions around the Alabama hills to simulate the remote, expansive regions of Afghanistan, giving a broader view of the setting and the isolation of Tony Stark's predicament. 6. Dynamic POV. POV shots put the audience in the perspective of a character, often during intense action scenes. For instance, the camera might mimic the point of view of a rider looking out over the horse's head, giving the audience a sense of what it's like to gallop through the hills at full speed. Technique. To achieve these shots, filmmakers sometimes mounted cameras on dollies, tracks, or even handheld rigs that could bounce and move like a rider. This helped create an immersive feeling the camera work in the Alabama hills has been a crucial element in bringing the dynamic and rugged essence of this landscape to life, especially in Western films and other action-heavy genres. The unique geography of the area provided cinematographers with a natural playground to explore. The Alabama hills and the surrounding region in Eastern California have a deep-rooted history connected to the indigenous peoples who inhabited the area long before it became famous for its Hollywood legacy. The native history of this region is primarily tied to the Paiute and Shoshone peoples, who lived, hunted, and traveled across these lands for centuries. Here's a detailed look at the Native American history in the Alabama hills and the broader Owens Valley area. The native tribes of the region. 1. The Owens Valley Paiute, Numu. The Owens Valley Paiute, who call themselves the Numu, were the predominant group in the area that includes the Alabama Hills. They have lived in the Owens Valley, where the Alabama Hills are located, for thousands of years. Their traditional lands extend along the Owens River and include the valleys, mountains, and desert areas. The Numu were known for their resourcefulness and ability to thrive in a landscape that could be harsh and arid. They developed a deep understanding of the environment, utilizing the rivers, lakes, and plant life for sustenance. Seasonal movement. The Paiute people practiced a semi-nomadic lifestyle, often moving with the seasons to make the most of the available resources. During warmer months, they would travel to higher elevations in the Sierra Nevada for hunting and gathering, while winter months were spent in lower valleys, including areas around the Alabama hills. Number 2, the Western Shoshone, or New, were also present in the broader region, particularly to the north and east of the Alabama hills. Their territories overlapped with those of the Paiute, and there was a degree of cultural exchange and interaction between these groups. Like the Paiute, the Shoshone were skilled at living off the land. They hunted game, gathered seeds, nuts, and roots, and were adept at using the resources of the arid desert and mountainous terrain. Traditional lifestyle and practices. 1. Hunting and gathering. The indigenous peoples of the region relied heavily on hunting, fishing, and gathering. The Paiute were known for their skill in hunting small game like rabbits, uh, as well as larger animals like deer, which they would track in the higher elevations of the Sierras. The Alabama hills provided shelter and proximity to the Owens River, where fishing was an essential activity. The Numu also gathered wild plants, seeds, berries, and nuts, which they stored for use throughout the year. Basket weaving. One of the most significant cultural traditions of the Paiute was basket weaving. They created intricate and beautiful baskets that were both functional and artistic. These baskets were used for carrying food, gathering, and even for cooking. The craftsmanship was a vital part of their cultural identity and heritage, with specific patterns and designs passed down through generations. 3. Use of natural resources. The tribes utilized the natural resources of the Alabama hills and surrounding areas in ingenious ways. For example, piñon pine nuts were a critical food source that could be stored for long periods, and wild plants were used for medicine. The landscape's diverse plant life was central to their diet, traditional practices, and spiritual beliefs. Spiritual significance. The land in and around the Alabama hills held spiritual significance for the indigenous peoples. Certain areas were considered sacred, and natural formations were often tied to legends, myths, and cultural stories. The Paiute and Shoshone viewed the natural world as a living, interconnected system where mountains, rivers, animals, and plants all played a part in the balance of life. Respect for this balance was a key aspect of their spiritual beliefs, and it was reflected in their rituals, storytelling, and daily practices. Contact with European settlers. 1. Early contact and trade. The first Europeans to make contact with the native peoples in the Owens Valley were Spanish explorers in the 18th century. However, significant interactions did not occur until the mid-19th century, when American trappers, explorers, and settlers began to move into the area. Initial contacts often involved trade. The Paiute and Shoshone exchanged goods like animal pelts, food, and handmade items with early explorers. However, as more settlers moved in, conflicts began to arise over resources and land. 2. The California Gold Rush and westward expansion. The discovery of gold and the subsequent California Gold Rush, starting in 1848, led to an influx of miners and settlers who disrupted the traditional way of life for the Paiute and Shoshone. The quest for resources, including grazing land and water, resulted in competition and tension. 1850s-1860s conflicts. As settlers established farms, ranches, and mines, they encroached on native lands, leading to a series of conflicts. The Paiute fought to defend their territory and resources, but they were often outnumbered and outgunned. This period saw numerous skirmishes, including the Owens Valley Indian War, 1861 to 1865, where the U.S. military forcibly relocated many Paiute people from the valley. The Owens Valley Indian War, 1861 to 1865. The conflict in the Owens Valley was a result of increasing tensions between the Paiute and settlers. As settlers expanded their agricultural efforts, they diverted water from the Owens River, depriving the Paiute of their essential water sources. This led to a series of confrontations. The U.S. military was brought in to quell resistance, and many Paiute were forcibly relocated to reservations in Fort Tejon and later to the Bishop Paiute Reservation. This period was marked by violence, displacement, and the loss of traditional lands for the Paiute people. Despite these hardships, some groups of Paiute managed to remain in the area, and their descendants continue to live in the Owens Valley to this day, preserving their culture and traditions. Modern-day native presence and cultural preservation. Today, the legacy of the Paiute and Shoshone peoples endures in the Owens Valley. The Bishop Paiute tribe is one of the most prominent federally recognized tribes in the area, with a reservation located near the town of Bishop, not far from the Alabama hills. The tribe is actively involved in cultural preservation, including language revitalization, traditional crafts, and community events that celebrate their heritage. Cultural events. The Bishop Paiute tribe hosts events that showcase traditional dance, music, and crafts, helping to educate both native and non-native people about their rich cultural heritage. These efforts are vital in keeping their traditions alive. Land stewardship. The tribe also engages in environmental stewardship, working to protect the natural resources that have been integral to their culture for generations. There is a growing recognition of the need to balance modern development with the preservation of cultural and environmental integrity. The history of the Alabama Hills is deeply intertwined with the story of the Paiute and Shoshone peoples, who called this land home long before it became a backdrop for Hollywood films. Their knowledge of the land, spiritual connection to nature, and resilience in the face of adversity are integral to the history of the region. While the arrival of settlers brought immense change and hardship, the descendants of these tribes continue to honor and preserve their traditions, ensuring that the cultural legacy of the indigenous peoples of the Owens Valley remains. The Alabama Hills and the surrounding region in Eastern California have a deep-rooted history connected to the indigenous peoples who inhabited the area long before it became famous for its Hollywood legacy. The native history of this region is primarily tied to the Paiute and Shoshone peoples, who lived, hunted, and traveled across these lands for centuries. Here's a detailed look at the Native American history in the Alabama Hills and the broader Owens Valley area. The native tribes of the region. 1. The Owens Valley Paiute, Numu. The Owens Valley Paiute, who call themselves the Numu, were the first human presence in the Alabama Hills region and the broader Owens Valley area dates back thousands of years, with archaeological evidence suggesting that indigenous peoples have been living in this region for at least 10,000 to 12,000 years. Here's a look at how early humans arrived and settled in this area. Paleo-Indian period, 10,000 to 17,500 BCE. Quir. 1. Arrival of the first peoples. The earliest people to arrive in the area were part of what archaeologists refer to as the Paleo-Indians. These were hunter-gatherer groups who moved across North America following large game animals such as mammoths, mastodons, and bison. They likely arrived in the Owens Valley region as part of a broader migration during the end of the last ice age, around 10,000 to 12,000 years ago. Evidence of these early inhabitants includes stone tools such as spear points and scrapers, which have been found throughout the Great Basin region. While specific artifacts directly from the Alabama Hills might not be as prominent, similar findings in nearby locations suggest that early humans traversed and camped in this area. Number 2. Climate and environment. During this period, the climate was cooler and wetter than it is today, and the Owens Valley likely had more extensive water sources, including marshes, lakes, and rivers. This environment supported a variety of plants and animals, making it an ideal location for early human groups to find food, water, and shelter. Archaic period, 7500 BCE to 500 CE. 1. Adaptation to changing conditions. As the climate warmed and dried, large game animals became less common, and early inhabitants of the Owens Valley began to adapt their lifestyle. This period saw the development of more sophisticated hunting and gathering strategies. People hunted smaller game, such as rabbits, deer, and antelope, and gathered a wide range of plants, seeds, and nuts. Archaeological sites from this period reveal the presence of grinding stones used to process seeds and other plant materials, indicating that people were developing more diverse subsistence strategies. This adaptability was crucial as the region's environment became more arid. 2. Seasonal movement and settlement. Early indigenous groups were semi-nomadic, moving between higher elevations in the summer and lower valleys in the winter. This seasonal movement allowed them to exploit different resources as they became available, such as fishing in rivers, gathering pine nuts in the mountains, and hunting game in the valleys. The Alabama Hills would have been part of this seasonal movement, serving as a location for temporary camps and as a pathway between different resource-rich areas. Development of distinct cultures, 500 CE, contact period. 1. The rise of the Owens Valley Paiute, Numu. By around 500 CE, distinct cultural groups began to emerge in the Owens Valley, including the ancestors of the modern Paiute people. Over the centuries, they developed a complex understanding of the environment, creating a lifestyle that balanced hunting, fishing, and gathering with a unique system of water management. One of the most remarkable achievements of the Paiute was their use of irrigation to enhance their food supply. They developed small-scale irrigation systems that diverted water from natural sources to grow wild plants such as tubers and grasses. This practice, sometimes referred to as wildland agriculture, allowed them to sustain larger populations than simple gathering would have supported. 2. Cultural practices and trade. The indigenous groups of the Owens Valley were not isolated. They were part of a larger network of trade that spanned across the Great Basin, the Sierra Nevada, and even into the coastal regions of California. They traded goods such as obsidian, shells, baskets, and food, which helped them maintain connections with other tribes and adapt to changes in their environment. The Alabama Hills likely served as an area for gathering resources, hunting, and perhaps as a strategic location for trading and meeting with other groups. The variety of natural resources in the region, such as plants, game, and stone, made it an important part of their territory. Archaeological evidence in the Owens Valley. 1. Rock art and petroglyphs. Throughout the Owens Valley, and particularly in areas near the Alabama Hills, there are numerous examples of rock art and petroglyphs. These carvings, etched into the stone by indigenous peoples, provide insights into their beliefs, practices, and interactions with the land. Some of these petroglyphs are thought to date back several thousand years, depicting hunting scenes, animals, and symbolic figures. While the exact meanings can vary, they are believed to be connected to spiritual beliefs, rituals, and stories that were passed down through generations. 2. Artifacts and tools. Archaeologists have found arrowheads, spear points, grinding stones, and other tools throughout the Owens Valley, indicating the presence of long-term habitation and sophisticated tool-making skills. Some of these artifacts show the evolution of technology over time, from the early Paleo-Indian spear points to smaller, more refined arrowheads used by later groups. These artifacts reveal that the people living in the region were skilled in using the resources available to them, making tools from local stones, bones, and other materials. This adaptability allowed them to thrive in an environment that could be harsh and unpredictable. Arrival of Europeans and impact on indigenous populations, 18th century onwards. 1. The arrival of Spanish explorers. The first European contacts with the indigenous peoples of the Owens Valley likely occurred in the late 18th century, when Spanish explorers began to venture into the area. These early encounters were sporadic, and it wasn't until the mid-19th century that more sustained contact would begin, especially during the era of westward expansion by American settlers. While the Alabama Hills themselves might not have seen direct contact during this early period, the broader Owens Valley was increasingly impacted by the arrival of explorers, traders, and eventually settlers. 2. The impact of the 19th century. By the mid-1800s, the indigenous peoples of the Owens Valley were facing profound changes. The arrival of miners, ranchers, and settlers brought new diseases, competition for resources, and conflicts over land. The Owens Valley Indian War, 1861 to 1865, was one of the most significant conflicts, as the Paiute fought to defend their lands against settlers who sought to control the valley's fertile land and water sources. After the conflict, many indigenous people were forcibly removed from the area, sent to reservations, or faced significant disruption to their traditional ways of life. Despite these challenges, some communities managed to stay in the area, and their descendants continue to live in and around the Owens Valley today. Conclusion: the Alabama Hills and the surrounding Owens Valley have been inhabited for thousands of years, long before the arrival of Europeans and the establishment of modern towns. The indigenous peoples of the region, particularly the Paiute, developed a deep connection to the land, understanding its resources and creating ways of life that were sustainable and adapted to the natural environment. The rich archaeological record, including tools, the first human presence in the Alabama Hills region, and the broad The Owens Valley Indian War, 1861 to 1865, was a conflict between the Paiute people, primarily the Owens Valley Paiute, or Numu, and American settlers and the U.S. military. It was driven by tensions over land, water, and resources in the Owens Valley of eastern California. The war was part of a broader pattern of conflict during the westward expansion of the United States, as settlers encroached on indigenous lands across the country. Here's a detailed look at the background, causes, major events, and aftermath of the Owens Valley Indian War. Sure. Background and causes of the conflict. 1. Settlement and expansion. In the mid-19th century, the Owens Valley was primarily inhabited by the Owens Valley Paiute, Numu, who had lived there for thousands of years. They were skilled hunters, gatherers, and farmers, using small-scale irrigation to grow crops like wild rice and native plants. The discovery of gold in California in 1848 led to a massive influx of settlers and miners moving west. By the late 1850s, American settlers began to move into the Owens Valley, seeking land for ranching and farming. The region's fertile land and water resources made it an attractive place for agricultural development, and the Los Angeles Aqueduct later added to its strategic value. Number two, tensions over resources. The arrival of settlers led to competition for the region's water and land. The Owens Valley Paiute had a system of diverting water from creeks to irrigate their crops, which they had been practicing long before the settlers arrived. However, the newcomers began diverting water for their own ranches, cutting off water supplies to the Paiutes' fields and disrupting their way of life. The settlers also introduced cattle ranching, which led to overgrazing and competition for natural resources. The Paiute depended on the valley's grasses, wild plants, and small game, and as more land was taken over by cattle, their access to these essential resources dwindled. This led to escalating tensions between the indigenous population and the settlers. Outbreak of the war. 1. Initial conflicts. The situation reached a boiling point in 1861 when a series of disputes over land and water rights escalated into violence. The Paiute, facing starvation as their food sources were depleted, began raiding settler ranches for livestock. These raids were both a means of survival and a form of resistance against the settlers who had encroached on their territory. In response, settlers called for military intervention. The U.S. Army, which had a strong presence in California after the gold rush, was deployed to the region to protect settler interests and suppress the Paiute resistance. 2. The role of Colonel George S. Evans. Colonel George S. Evans, who commanded a detachment of California volunteers, was sent to the Owens Valley in 1862. His mission was to quell the Paiute resistance and secure the valley for continued American settlement. Evans and his troops established Camp Independence near modern-day Independence, California, as a base of operations. From there, they launched a series of campaigns aimed at subduing the Paiute. These campaigns involved skirmishes, surprise attacks, and attempts to cut off the Paiute from their food and water supplies. Major events and battles. 1. Paiute resistance and guerrilla tactics. The Paiute, led by notable figures such as Chief Joaquin Jim and Captain George, engaged in guerrilla warfare against the U.S. military. They used their intimate knowledge of the terrain to launch surprise attacks, ambushes, and raids on military patrols and settler outposts. The rugged landscape of the Owens Valley, including areas like the Alabama Hills, provided ideal cover for these tactics. The Paiute's ability to navigate the mountains, valleys, and deserts allowed them to evade larger, better-equipped military forces. Despite being outgunned, they managed to carry out effective raids, disrupting supply lines and attacking isolated camps. Skirmishes and battles. Several key skirmishes took place during the Owens Valley Indian War, with both sides suffering casualties. One of the most significant engagements occurred near Big Pine, where the Paiute managed to ambush and inflict heavy losses on a group of California volunteers. However, the U.S. military, with its superior numbers and firepower, gradually wore down the Paiute forces. The troops employed a strategy of scorched earth, burning villages, destroying food supplies, and targeting the Paiute's ability to sustain themselves. This strategy led to significant suffering among the Paiute as they struggled with hunger and displacement. 3. Negotiations and broken promises. In 1863, after months of fighting, there were attempts to negotiate a peace treaty. The U.S. government agreed to relocate the Paiute to Fort Tejon, a reservation located several hundred miles south of the Owens Valley, in exchange for an end to hostilities. Many Paiute were forced to march to Fort Tejon in what was essentially a form of forced relocation, reminiscent of the broader pattern of indigenous displacement across the United States. The journey was arduous, and upon arrival, conditions at Fort Tejon were poor, with insufficient food and shelter. However, the relocation plan was not entirely successful. Many Paiute escaped during the journey or later returned to the Owens Valley, unwilling to abandon their ancestral lands. This led to ongoing skirmishes and tensions for several more years. Aftermath and consequences. 1. Decline of Paiute autonomy. By 1865, the U.S. military had largely succeeded in suppressing the Paiute resistance. Although some Paiute managed to return to the Owens Valley, their autonomy was severely diminished. The conflict had devastated their communities, and the traditional way of life was profoundly disrupted. The war marked the end of effective indigenous control over the Owens Valley. The valley was increasingly taken over by ranches, farms, and later infrastructure projects that further diverted water resources. The Los Angeles Aqueduct, built in the early 20th century, would eventually drain much of the Owens River, transforming the valley's ecosystem and further marginalizing the Paiute. Number two, legacy of displacement. The Owens Valley Indian War was part of a broader pattern of displacement and forced assimilation faced by indigenous peoples across the United States. The events of the war and the subsequent relocation efforts contributed to the loss. The Owens Valley Indian War, 1861 to 1865, was a conflict between the Paiute people, primarily the Owens Valley Paiute, or Numi,